Hi, I'm Josephine Chia. I'm a Peranakan. I was born and raised in Kampungku in the 1950s. Altogether, I've written 13 books, 3 adult novels, 2 children novels, 1 collection of short stories, 4 memoirs about my mother and my kampung, and 2 yoga books and 1 cookery book. These were published in UK. Except for those specialized books, all my stories has to do with a little bit of Singapore history, so that I give my books a Singaporean flavor as such. For example, my novel When the Flower Dies is based on the kampungs that existed on the old East Coast before land reclamation and before the Singapore Changi Airport was built. And I wanted to show what it was like for people living in those kampungs and for them to have to move, and what life was like for them going from kampung to HDB. I think these are themes that are very close to my heart because I myself had to move out of my kampung in 1975 when they started demolishing all the kampung. I went to live in UK in the 1980s, and I didn't get back here to Singapore till the end of 2012. So I've been away a long time. And of course, by this time, all the kampungs in Singapore have been demolished, and young people in Singapore didn't know anything about the kampung and the way of life then. So I felt that the kampung life need to be documented, and especially as it's a particular phase in our Singapore's development. So I applied to the NAC for a grant to write my book, and I called it Kampung Spirit Gotong Royong. The title was important to me, especially the words Gotong Royong, because it is suggesting a community way of life that was really special in the villages. So I felt that it needed to be mentioned. And Marshall Cavendish published it in 2013, and in 2014 it won the inaugural Singapore Literature Prize for non-fiction. So I'm very pleased about that. It means that more people are willing to read the book. And so now I've been giving talks about the kampung life, and sharing my experiences. And it's quite amazing how some of the youngsters are really surprised at how tough life was in the 1950s in Singapore. My belief is that we must not live in isolation without care for our neighbors. That is one of the most wonderful things about life in the kampung, where people come together and we act as a community, and race and religion does not impinge on our friendship. And I think it's possible in our modern society to have this kampung spirit. And I always say that kampung spirit begins with you, not with the other person, because you must be the first one to start and say hello in the corridor or on the lift when you see someone. So that's the way to nurture kampung spirit in our modern society, so that we are not completely locked into ourselves or our family only, because community is important. Community is the strength that we will have when we have to face a crisis. And I'm very lucky here in HDB Enclave in Farrer Park. We are very small, but we have a residents committee, and the resident committee organizes events, and on occasions like the New Year of every race. So people can join in. We can have meals together with our neighbors and get to know them. So it's a way to engender kampung spirit. It is possible. I suppose it's more difficult in condos where the doors are always locked and in bungalow houses, but generally in HDB it is more possible, and I think we should endeavor to know our neighbors and just be friendly to say hello. Sudah makan belum? Have you eaten? Siapa boleh in Hokkien? So that it just provides a starting point to say hello to someone. People might think you're crazy initially, like they do, this crazy lady in the sarong kebaya always talking to strangers, but eventually they respond. So that is the kind of kampung spirit, that you can generate. And we're lucky we have a small community garden, so people come together to garden and do things together. And we even have a little hen house and a rooster, and the rooster will wake us up in the morning, crowing. And it really reminds me of my kampung, when you had no alarm clocks in the old days and the rooster would crow in the morning and wake you up. I just love it. Gender roles were more rigid in the old days. My father used to say, girls are a waste of rice, jiak liu bi in Hokkien. Because they think that, once the girls get married, they belong to the other family. So they are no longer part of their family. Why bother wasting rice on them? And what is the point of giving them an education? It's a waste of money because they will go to someone else's family as well. So that kind of thinking was very much prevalent in those days, in the 1950s. I don't blame my father because I suppose he is the product of his society, his gender. But it was tough. So my brothers were sent to school, but I wasn't. So one day, I think I was about 7, I remembered seeing a Milo tin and couldn't read the words on the Milo tin. They were like squiggles, like worms, like, if you don't know your alphabet, how can you read what is M or I or L or O, So I sat down and cried and cried. My mom said, "Why are you crying?" I said, "Because I'm so stupid. I can't read. I don't know what these words are." He said, "No, you're not stupid. You're ignorant, but not stupid. There is a difference. Ignorant because you didn't have an education." And I said, "I want an education. I want to go to school. I want to go to school." So I cried and cried and pestered her for days and weeks, and until eventually she thought, "Oh, okay, perhaps if you go to school, you would be able to earn some money and perhaps bring some money home too. Yeah, that would be useful," she thought. So my father wouldn't give her any, so she decided that she would sell nasi lemak. She was such a good cook. I mean, all Peranakan women are at that time, and she made the most fantastic nasi lemak, and we had really like fresh coconut milk, right, straight from the tree. When the Malay boys would climb up the tree and get the coconut down, but everything had to be done by hand. So it was laborious. It was quite a task for her. So, but eventually I did go to school, thank God, to my mom, and had an education, and so I'm always eternally grateful to her. So I want young people to realize that modern life is actually much easier than life had been for us in the 1950s. I mean, we had to share our bathroom and our toilet with the neighbors, and we had no electricity. I mean, it was really quite challenging for us. So if there is any message for me to other readers, is that do appreciate your life. You really have it nice and comfortable compared to our generation, because it was really, really challenging. So yes, enjoy your life, enjoy what you have, and be grateful. Yes, I've got a book coming out. Penguin Random House has just signed a contract with me for my book, Dengan, Time Traveler, The Red Hill Tragedy. It's a children's book. It will come out in 2022, the delay due to the pandemic. It's based on a story from the Sejarah Melayu, Singapura di Langgar Todak, about the swordfish and this Malay boy called Nadim. So there's a modern 21st century Peranakan schoolboy, 11-year-old schoolboy, who read this story and was very distressed about the fact that poor Nadim had to die, after giving such a clever solution to the bendahara about the swordfish. So he decided that he will travel back in time. So it's a kind of a fantasy novel to try and travel back in time to try and rescue Nadim. So yeah, that's the book coming out. In November, there will be the Peranakan Literary Festival. So I've been invited to speak about my novel, When a Flower Dies, because the novel's theme is about culture, and specifically the Peranakan culture, and how we can retain this culture in modern times. And on December the 9th, the Singapore Literature Book Club has invited me to the Central Library, and we will be talking about my memoirs about my mum, Frog Under a Coconut Shell. This book was my first book that was translated. It was picked up by an Indonesian publisher, Serambi Ilmu Mesta, and it was retitled Katak Dalam Tempurung. So yeah, I'll be busy. Quite a few books coming up, and this will all be live events. Hopefully the restrictions won't be there, and so the events will go on. Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.